So in disciplinary literacy, as we just discussed, we have 4 different categories: reading, writing, thinking, and speaking. So you all have chosen to hear the presentation on reading. So what is disciplinary literacy? When we talk about disciplinary literacy, we're going beyond just reading strategies. Things that are just generic that just help students to comprehend the text. Disciplinary literacy goes into inquiry. It also emphasizes how students are using the knowledge that they're learning. And so when we talk specifically about reading, we really want to talk about how our students are unlocking text, how they are answering questions related to their comprehension. Most students, when we discuss things like lexile levels, are only understanding about 70% of the material that's placed in front of them. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that as we are teaching these reading skills to our students, that we are making sure that our students are able to understand their information and come to a deeper meaning within each text. There's some shifts that we have to consider when we teach reading within the discipline. We want to rely less on just generic strategies and more on specific literacy practices. We want to show students how experts in our field read relevant texts, not just how we read a textbook. We also want to provide students with a variety of texts, varying lengths related to disciplinary topics, instead of relying on only a single source. Later on in this presentation, we're going to talk about how student choice is one of the most important ways to get students to engage into their learning. We also need to model the language of discipline by doing things like read alouds, explaining why experts use words or terms in a certain way rather than engaging in isolated vocabulary studies. In another section, teachers are going to learn about how one particular vocabulary word can mean so many different things in other disciplines. So we want to make sure that we're not just teaching isolated vocabulary, but we're being very specific about how vocabulary relates to our discipline. We also want to challenge students' perceptions of literacy by talking about how disciplinary experts read. How do they write? How do they speak? How do they think? Not just conform to conventional rules of English language arts classes. We also want to think in terms of how students use new information to do their work within a discipline and not just prepare for a test. And give students time to read in class and encourage them to read at home. One of the major buzzwords in education today is close reading, and I'm sure that many of you have used these strategies in your classrooms when you're teaching your students reading. We no longer just want to hand our students a primary source document and ask them just to read it and answer questions. We want students to be active readers. And so what you see on the left is a sample text annotating poster, where this teacher has basically laid out for students that what she wants to see in their reading is what's important, what are some key words, what do they understand, what's unfamiliar to them, what are they surprised about. And then in the margin, she wants them to write about what they're thinking as they read. And so on your right, you see a sample of a student that's done just that. So we have so many students in our class that are so many different reading levels and abilities, and a lot of students who just won't read. So how do I engage my students in reading anything at all? One of the quickest ways we can do that is giving them choice, as I said earlier. John Guthrie did a study in 2007 on adolescence and engagement, and it basically stated that students should be allowed to shape their own reading through autonomy and ownership. And I know what you're thinking. So if I've got something in my standards, I've got to get my students to understand, how did I offer them choice in that? I need them to read that material. Well, think about how could we offer our students varying primary sources of varying lengths. Not always does it have to be a 2-page primary source document. We could break it down into smaller passages for our students. Think about different opportunities that you can give your students to research a topic and find a reading that they believe that they could read and get some information from. Let's think about ways we could vary what we offer our students. Most important, make reading as active as possible by having students stop and talk after reading a few paragraphs, or have the students write questions. If you happen to go by the inquiry station, you'll learn some information about CASA's levels of thinking and how we can begin to put the onus of of questioning and thinking on our students and not just on the teacher. Current events is another great way to get our students reading because these are things that are happening in their everyday lives. Try to find things that are relevant to the topics in your class and bring them to the students. I know many of you show CNN News to your students, and what a great opportunity that would be to not only have them see it on television, but then have them pull an article and read it as well and have some discussions with their classmates about what their thoughts are on those current events and how it applies to things that they are learning in the classroom. Also try sites like Newzilla, for those who know it by its proper name. Common Lit, these are two places that you can go. They offer websites or articles that are based on various Lexile levels, and you could even send this out to your students, and you can allow your students to decide at which Lexile level they would like to read. Red Feed Blue Feed is a website from the Wall Street Journal. And what they've done is they've taken news articles that have popped up on Facebook sites, and they've posted them side by side, articles that are very, very conservative, very liberal. And they post them side by side for people to actually get a better view of what these two sides are thinking. And they chose to use Facebook articles because most people in America in recent polls have stated that that's where they get their news. So what an amazing opportunity for you to use this in class to look at multiple perspectives, bias with your students, and have some really great conversations about what's happening in the world around us while tying it into our standards. All right, so in your green folder, what you're going to find is there's article or a primary source document on captains of industry or robber barons, and this comes from a mini-Q from the DBQ project. And what I'd like for you to do is to read through document B and C. Just read through it one time. Once you've had an opportunity to read through document B and C, read through it a second time, this time using the annotating the text poster that's provided for you. Next, I want you to think about how would you model this activity for your students. And then turn and talk to your partner about what you would have students do with these documents after they have annotated the text. Thank you for listening today, and I hope that you've learned a little bit about how we can encourage our students to read more in our classrooms and incorporate more reading, and encourage them to incorporate more reading even outside the class. All right, thanks, and please make sure to fill out the Please make sure to go to this website and fill out your todaysmeet.com. I would love for you all to talk about how you can incorporate more reading into your lessons and respond on the todaysmeet.com in 140 characters or less, and then also respond to someone else in the room. Have a great day.